Mm.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello. Today we've got Brian Mark, also known as B Mark Fit on Instagram, knocking stuff over there already. I heard something in the background.
That's so funny because we literally talked about the fact, like, if something knocks over, we'll laugh about
We
it.
can
That
edit it, but
happened.
I was like, nah, let's just leave that in. But yeah, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you here. Great to connect with you.
Dude, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me onto the show. It's a pleasure. You've got a sick podcast over here, and I'm just like excited to be a part of it. So thanks for inviting me on the
I
show, dude.
appreciate that, man. I still have imposter syndrome when someone tells me that, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I have a podcast. Like now I have a little more credentials behind it, but I still have those moments, and I'm sure you may as well, or we could talk about how to overcome that. But like when
Yeah,
I first started, and I'm like, man, I don't feel like I can say I have a podcast. It's just my mom liking it on Facebook at this point,
yeah,
to
yeah,
where
yeah,
you
yeah.
get some momentum and growth. But I'd love to dive into your story and maybe your business. I mean, I saw your bio. You've got a couple things here. Struggled with a drug addiction at 23, made your first million before 28 years old,
Yeah.
top 50 business podcast for entrepreneurship. And then just to name the last two on here, I mean, not that it's like a short list, these are all amazing accomplishments. Um, you're the owner of two seven-figure businesses, gym and business coach for online trainers.
Yeah.
You're a family man, fitness competitor, and you're obsessed with mindset. And I just saw in your story, I guess you're a couple weeks out from a competition now, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's freaking awesome. So right now I'm like 19 days out from my show.
Sweet.
And yeah, I'm like I actually like I listened to a couple of your podcast episodes before getting on the interview with you. And I really connected with you because like I'm very goal driven and very mindset driven in all aspects of my life. And I feel like it all stemmed from, one of the things that you mentioned, which was when I was 23 years old. I started doing drugs and drinking. And at the time, like I think every 23-year-old starts off like just kind of like, partying and dipping into the scene here and there.
Going
But for me,
out,
it's
yeah,
like,
staying up late.
yeah. And being around like not the wrong people, but, hanging around the wrong environments. Like I was a nightclub bartender. I was always working there. And eventually I started kind of, consuming it and it just became a part of my life. And so at 23 years old, I'm just going to keep a long story short. I basically came to a realization where I'd spent 6 months doing drugs, lost my friends, lost my family, like I basically lost everybody's faith in me. And there was like kind of like a come to myself moment where I got fired from my nightclub bartending job. My girlfriend at the time, who was also an addict, broke up with me because she said that I needed help, which to me was a sign that I was like, I must be really
You're
messed
like an
up.
addict is telling me I need help. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I'm
come on.
like, I must be really messed up. And then, and I remember I went back, I got kicked out of my house. So I went back to my grandma's house at the time. And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and she was still up and she opened the door for me and she was waiting for me to get home. And I remember like coming into her house, laying on the couch, and I just started crying. And she came over to me and she like started reading me the Bible, and she didn't ask me what was wrong, or she wasn't judging me. It was just like, she just read me the Bible and she cried with me. And I remember like in that moment, I was like, I'm going to get better for this like person, like
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, I'm going to get better for this person.
I
And
love that.
yeah. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life at the time, but I just knew that I wanted to get better. And so, from there, I didn't really have anywhere else to go. Like I didn't really have anything to do. Like I got fired from all my jobs, lost my reputation. And so I decided that I was going to go work at a summer camp as a cleaner. And I was just going to scrub toilets for the summer, get sober, get clean, cut myself off from any toxic influences like nightclubs and partying and drinking. And from that point, I started working on this vision for my life. And on this vision, and this is where I really connected with you, I started writing down like little goals and
Yeah.
aspirations that I could start to accomplish. And that summer, the only goal that I cared about was being able to run 5 kilometers in under 25 minutes. So that was my goal. So at first I went for a run around the lake. I could barely like walk 100 meters before like collapsing and wanting to die. And then the next day I'd push myself a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more. And by the end of the summer, I was at 5 laps in under 25 minutes. That summer as well, I also developed a vision where I told myself, I'm like, I want to become a pro fitness model. I want to make my first million. I want to lead a massive movement of people. And at the time I wanted to run a fitness coaching business. So I wanted to be able to like inspire hundreds of thousands of people online with my fitness coaching business. And so I just started working towards this vision. And after I got back from that summer camp, I started my online fitness coaching business. And that was really the like start of my journey. And I think for the last, like, that was in 2013, and then my business has just like grown exponentially since, and we can talk about any milestone in between. But I think the biggest thing for me now is that like I think the number one thing that really helped like catapult my growth was knowing that if I went backwards, I was going back to drugs. And that to me was like never an option. And so, yeah, I've just been growing consistently for the last few years, and you can ask me anything about any level of that. And I think it all stemmed from that, like that addiction, and that like, that's like kind of the origin story, I guess you could say.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing the whole story. I mean, just the, a couple nuggets there, you know, the emotion that you had when your grandma was like crying with you and reading. Like a lot of times I find this to be true for me. It's easy to take care of yourself and you hit a couple of minor goals. Like I know you said you heard that on my show where, you know, I had a goal, like, I just want to hit 20K months. Like that's pretty good. Why stop myself there though? You know, like if I start to tie an emotion to, I want to do this for others, I want to get better for them. Now your selfishness, like you could take care of yourself with like a little bit, right? But to take care of others and really change the world and change, you know, your followers and your clients' lives, you've got to start putting others first. And I think that emotion piece is huge. And then the other thing that I wrote down here was how you started working on a vision, right? It was something simple at first, just I want to be able to run a certain speed, you know, in distance, and that was it. And then you added on, I want to hit $1 million in revenue. I want to do this coaching business. And so it just starts with that for everyone listening. I mean, that's the nugget I would take away is like, sometimes we're kind of limited by our own situation. You're surrounded by friends that want to go party and they want to go out every weekend. When you start surrounding yourself with people who think bigger and they're dreaming bigger, right? That's when you start to expand your mindset and you start to do way more. So what's one of the things that's on your vision now? And like, how often do you do that vision exercise?
So the vision thing is like, it's constant, never ending, nonstop. I actually have so every year, Chris, at the start of the year, I always do a vision board for 2021.
Oh,
so
you do a new one per year?
Every year. Oh yeah. Every year. So
I got to step it up.
Yeah, I've got my vision board on my wall right now. I'm happy to share everything that's on it too. So when I started the year, my goal was to have 1,500 active students. Right now we have 1,150. And I think when we started the year, I think I was at like 500 or 600. My goal is to have 150 students over $10,000 a month. Right now we have 178 students over 10K a month.
Awesome.
I actually wanted to buy a Lamborghini this year, but my wife made me promise her that we buy a house before we buy a Lambo. She's like, if you buy a fucking Lambo before we buy
I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. So we did end up getting our dream house, and it's amazing.
Congrats,
6,500 square feet in Kelowna, and it's like absolutely incredible. So I didn't get the Lambo. I did get the dream house. But one of the biggest things that I wrote down as well, which is why I'm super excited that I'm talking to you, is that I want to get 1 million podcast downloads. And
you're on the way, man. You're on the way.
I'm there. I'm like, you're there. And
you said you're like at 400,000 ish overall, right? Yeah. You're, that's how I was too. I was like, ooh, 200,000, ooh, 300,000. And then one day I logged in to upload my next episode and boom, I was there. So trust me, man, you're going to be there in no time.
Dude, that's cool. Yeah,
you got to DM me whenever you make it. Send me the screenshot.
I will. I think you're the first podcaster that I've like talked to that has like hit it. So I'm like
really
excited. Yeah. I'm just excited that I'm talking to you because you're doing it, bro. Like, it's
that's
so
awesome,
cool.
man. And then the next level is like the 10 million or whatever, but it's funny because you're always chasing your goals and we always level up. I don't think you ever really arrive. Right. And that, you said that yourself, you update your vision board every single year. So even when you get that Lambo next, because I know you already knocked out the dream house, the Lambo's next. I got a Lambo too coming up, right? I got the little toy car.
I love it.
Like that's on my vision board. It's on my wallpaper as well. Yeah. But knowing that even when you hit that, there's going to be other goals like, oh, I want to start a charity. I want to do this. Like I want to start this other business. It's just a never ending journey.
And I think that like, as your vision progresses, Chris, like I think for me, it's like certain things become more important than others. Exactly. And so, you know, it's even as an example, like I used to like chase money for the sake of money just because I thought like money was cool. But like now, like, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just like speaking my truth, like making $500,000 a month, like money is no longer a worry for me. And so now I'm more interested in like something that you said, which really connected with me, which is like, I want to show up to change people's fucking lives every day.
Yeah.
Cause like that to me is like, like I love the impact. Like I love getting messages from people being like, bro, like your podcast really spoke to me today. Or like that post that you wrote really fucking hit. Like that to me is what I want. And so one of the things that you said that I kind of like, I want to reiterate is, I think when you're working on your goals at first, it can be really hard to do it for yourself, especially when like for me at the time, I don't know if this is true for a lot of you guys, I didn't really like myself. when I first started working on entrepreneurship. Like I wasn't really like homies with myself. And so doing things to make myself better, like it was like, I didn't really care about myself.
You didn't feel like you deserved it or didn't really care, I guess.
Yes, right? Exactly. I'm like, I don't even really care about myself. So like, why, like, what's the purpose? But dedicating myself to a purpose. And for me at the time, my purpose was I'm going to like retire my grandma. Yeah. And it still is like, I'm going to retire my grandma. And also now it's like, I'm going to serve these people. Like that to me is what gets me out of bed, because I do 5 podcast episodes a week. And I like, sometimes I don't want to do it, especially being 19 days out from a show. But the reason I continue to show up on this level is because I'm doing it. And it's not about me anymore. It's like, 100%. It's about the people that are tuning in. It's about the people that are listening, you know, like that's why I'm doing it.
I love that, man. And I have like a morning routine and everything, but like right next to me, I have something. I could actually probably grab it right here. Hold on a second. So it's just a little picture of like my why, right? It's got my fiance and I on there. Yes. It's got traveling. We've been to Indonesia and Greece, and it's got my immediate family as well as our pets. We've got 3 fur babies.
So cool.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is my why. I want to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, travel, take care of my family. And another thing, going off you being able to retire your grandma, I saw a meme or something on Instagram, and it really hit home because like we talked about the selfish thing, it's easy to hit those little goals and take care of your own bills. But it said something like, if you haven't retired your parents yet, you're not there, you know, like that's the next level where you can really take care of your family, and you can do those cool things like make a YouTube video about buying a car for your dad or something, you know, like those really cool things that you're making more of an impact than just on yourself.
Dude, and I actually like, I want to talk about that because I have 2 things to say about that. Number 1 is I literally like think that anybody can do it. Like I really do think that like
same here.
Anybody that can breathe, that has access to a phone. Like I've seen people go viral on TikTok and I'm like, how are you viral? So like, I really do believe that anybody that wants it can have it. But I also think that it takes like a ridiculous amount of like belief in yourself and work ethic. And
a lot of people don't have that belief. They're like, I can't do it. They don't like themselves, right? We just talked about that a second ago.
Yeah. But I think it's like, I think even if you don't believe that you could do it, I think just like understanding that like, if somebody else, like, if Chris is doing it, then like it's possible. Like Chris is making, you know, Chris is fucking at 1 million podcast downloads. Like he
didn't have a podcast like just 4 years ago, right? He's when he started.
And here he is, he's doing it. I'm like, and then I see you, I'm like, yo, if Chris can do it, I can do it. Like, I'm like, that's how I think though.
I love that. Like, and I even heard on your podcast where you were like, I guess you updated the intro at some point and you're like, yeah, you know, I was able to raise my, my income to 50,000 a month or whatever. And now you're here like, dude, hitting 500K months, like nothing. Right. And so you were at that certain level where you're like, I'm proud of what I accomplished. And now you're at a whole different level. And so same here, like I'm talking to you and I'm like, dude, you were where I am. And now look at you, right? You know, not saying you're not smarter than me or I'm smarter than you. It's like, you're a normal dude doing your thing, showing up consistently for your audience every single day. And so am I. And so I love that belief. But the belief is really the first step, because if you don't believe, you'll never take the action required.
Dude, and I think that another thing that I want to talk about that you mentioned, which is super important, is you talked about surrounding yourself with the right people. And you said you basically like, if you're hanging out with people that don't believe in you, or you're hanging out with people that are like doubting you or casting doubt, or like just have their own self-limiting beliefs, and they're talking to you about your goals, or you're telling them, you know, like, I want to start this business, or I'm working on my real estate business, or I'm doing these things, right? Like, and you talk to them, and if they have their own self-limiting beliefs, they're going to impose those upon you when you tell them your goals.
Exactly.
And so they're going to say things to you like, are you like sure, like you should get something more stable, like get like a real career, right? And that's the type of stuff that, you know, you'll hear. And so I think what's important is, one of the things you said, you're like I'm making 500K a month. You've got 1 million podcast downloads. Like I have something and you have something.
We both have something that we can teach each other.
Exactly. And that's the key, is like when you start to understand that there are other people that are already doing what you're doing. And then you can like, just ask yourself like, okay, like what are they doing that I'm not? And then you start doing more of those things, and you start surrounding yourself with those people and asking them some questions. It's like, that's how you get closer to your goals.
100%.
And that's how it's like, that's how you make it possible, is like understanding that if somebody else has done it, I can do it. And if I just need to, you know, get access to the right information. Maybe I need in the mentorship program, or maybe I need to listen to the podcast, and if I'm listening to the podcast and I'm still not getting it, maybe I need to talk to the person and hire the person. So like, it's possible for anybody. You just need to surround yourself with the right people and get in the right rooms.
Yeah, I just had this conversation the other day, how kind of like what you were saying, we oftentimes have those friends, and I've done a poll on my story to see hey, do you know any millionaires that you grew up with or family members? And most people, like 70 or 80%, at least of my audience, said they didn't know any of those people growing up. Like maybe somebody had a rich uncle or something, but usually you're not surrounded by it. So you kind of have to seek it. Otherwise, you're kind of a product of your environment, right? You said you were working late nights and that whole like nightlife and everything caught up with you because that's what you saw. You saw people slamming 2 Red Bulls at 2 a.m. to keep going until 3 or whatever, and then go to the after party. And that's a totally different thing than when you go to these masterminds or whatever, where you're like, dude, that guy freaking sold his company by 22 and now he's doing this other thing. He's got, 3 companies going on at once versus your high school buddy who's still living at home or whatever at 30. Yeah. It's totally different reality. So I love that you said that. And the phrase that really stands out is like proximity is power. If you can just get in someone's proximity who is where you want to be, I mean, you can learn from osmosis just being there, but also more on like the one-on-one relationships, coaching, mentorship, that kind of thing.
The good news about this conversation is I feel like anybody that's listening to this podcast right now is like, you're halfway there.
That's it. Literally. Like everyone's already trying to do something and improve their situation.
Like even just like by being in the audience on some level and like hearing this conversation, like you're halfway there. And I think that if you're listening to this right now and you're like, okay, like proximity is power, like what I like to do is I like to think of myself and I'm like, okay, so like who are the people that because everybody says you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that's like, everybody knows that like age old adage, but I want you to think about the last 5 people that you talk to online or in person. Cause that doesn't just apply to like in-person
friendships.
It also applies to online. Like who are you texting back and forth on a day-to-day basis? Who are you constantly communicating with? Like who's in your fucking reality right now? Is it your mom?
100%.
And then audit like the conversations that you have with your mother and ask yourself, are those conversations getting me closer to my goals? Because like one of the things that you said that I think is really important is like not a lot of people grew up around success. In fact, for me, like I actually grew up thinking that successful people were like abrasive and rude and higher than thou.
Right.
And that's where the imposter syndrome came from that we talked about earlier, because as I like the first time I made $100,000 in a month, I felt like, I was like, oh my God, I'm like, somebody
I'm becoming
like,
one of these people,
dude. I'm like the tax man is going to come steal all my money. Like, I'm like all my clients are going to fire me. Like, I'm like, they're going to find out how much I'm making and then they're all going to hate me. Like all of these,
they're going to see what I drive or my goals for a Lambo. Like,
all of it. I'm like, I can't tell anyone where my house is or like how much it is. Like I like all these weird fears.
Yeah.
But it's because it's like success isn't like, it's not normalized in our society. And it's almost like you talk about it and it's like this weird thing
that like no one can achieve.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it's portrayed. Like, oh, the 1%, right? The wealthy.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, why does it have to be like that? I feel like it's like there's enough in the universe for everybody, but if you really do have to want it, you got to put yourself in the right environments. You've got to cut yourself off from the people that are like holding you back. You got to get clear on a vision and decide like what you really, really want in life and like start to believe in yourself.
Dude, that's the thing. And I remember I've heard Tom Bilyeu talk about this on his show Impact Theory, how he would volunteer in the inner cities. And so much research was showing that a lot of your life is almost predetermined based on the zip code you were born in, because he would ask people, hey, if I can give you a magic wish and you could wish for anything in the world, what would it be? And most people would be like $1 million. Like that was the biggest number they could think of. And he's like, why the hell would you only wish for $1 million? You could wish for like $1 billion, $1 trillion.
Yeah.
$1 million just seemed like so out of reach and impossible for these people because of what they saw in their environment. And so it's really important if you are in that kind of environment where you're auditing these relationships to like realize, hey, maybe I need to not text this person so much because it always leaves me feeling negative and in the state of like, I can't do it, versus talking to those optimistic people. So auditing yourself and your conversations, man, that's such a great nugget, because we sometimes feel obligated to have these conversations with people that we grew up with because they've always been in our life.
Dude, the only thing that you should be obligated to is like the type of person that you want to be.
Dude, hell yes.
Right? Like
that's awesome.
Like, that's what I'm about, is like, I'm super obligated to like accomplishing my goals. And so like
who's going to help me get there?
Yeah. And who's going to help me get there? And I'm not like saying that in a way where I'm using people. In fact, it's like the opposite. Like I'm a big believer, and I had to do this for a long time. Like when I cut off like my drug addiction, I just had to walk alone for a long time. Like I just had to be a lone wolf because like everybody in my life that I knew was partying, drinking, doing drugs. My family, I had basically lied, cheated, or stolen money from them so that I could get drugs. So I didn't really have a lot of people's faith in me. So I just walked alone for a long time until but I was just married to this idea of like becoming a better person. So I was like, I'm just going to become better. I'm going to listen to the podcast. I'm going to listen to Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm going to work on my goals. I'm going to set these visions. I'm going to work on my weekly goals. And like, I just became married to that. And then it's almost like as soon as you start committing yourself into like self-excellence and you cut yourself off from toxic people and you start surrounding yourself with the right people, like the universe like starts working with you instead of against you. It's like, oh yeah,
it's funny.
Chris
how that
is
works.
serious. You know, he wants to be successful, and it starts like giving you opportunities, but you have to commit yourself to the path, you know?
I love it, man. Committing yourself to the path. And you use that term, like marrying the vision or like marrying what your outcome is, your goal. Yeah. That's so important, because if you don't really know what your goal is, you don't know where to go. You're kind of walking in random directions, versus if you know what you're at least getting pulled towards, whether it's, running that first goal that you had to like run X amount. I forget what you said, 5 laps.
5K,
and how fast?
5K in 25 minutes.
5K in 25 minutes. That was that first goal. That's as far as you could see. And you started by taking that first step of setting that goal. It wasn't even anything about monetary or business. And now you got the next goal, the podcast hit the 1 million downloads, which you're going to get there in no time. So I love that, just having the focus, having the discipline, walking alone if you have to, until you find those right people that are also maybe, I know a lot of us are like lone wolves, the entrepreneurial type. Yeah. We can't relate to a lot of friends that have day jobs, and why would they want to work for, that little measly pay and have to only get 2 weeks off a year. Yeah. So when you start to find these other like-minded people, that's when amazing things happen, because you're like, dude, he's where I was, or she's where I am. And let's talk about how we can grow together, get to that next level.
I also want to talk about this. So like, if you're listening to this right now, if you're in the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast audience, and I want to inspire you to take action, I really do.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
So if you're listening to this right now and you're like, okay, Chris and Brian, like I'm listening and I want to surround myself with the right people, but I don't really know like where they are or where to find them or like what to do. My best piece of advice for you is to find a mentor that's doing what you want to do and pay money to be around them.
That's the best way.
Straight up.
The fastest way too.
It's the fastest and it's the best way. And I'll tell you why. And I don't care if it's me or Chris, or like, I'm saying find a mentor, and I'll tell you why. Because when you invest and you take money out of your pocket and you give it over to somebody and you're like, I respect you and I want to learn from you and I'm willing to follow your lead. That's when you're like, okay, like I just took money is a representation of time and energy. So it took you a certain amount of time and energy to earn the capital that you're going to hand over to the mentor. So now you're going to take all this time and energy and you're going to hand over to the mentor and you're going to say like, I want to learn from you. So now you're committed. And when you commit yourself to a certain thing, more invested, you're going to be paying more attention. You're going to be listening to what they're saying. You're going to be implementing faster. But the truth is, the reason that a lot of people never make changes is because they're half in, half out. They're listening to the podcast a little bit and then they dip out and they go back to their regular life. And then they're excited about change. So they'll start listening to the podcast again. And then they're like dip out and they go back. And it's like, if you want to change, you have to burn the boats. You got to make a financial commitment, because by making a financial commitment, like all of a sudden now it's like all in or all out. When you make a financial commitment, you either make a radical change and you become a new person and you transform inside and out, or you stay the same person and you live your life full of regret. But honestly, 95% of the time, what ends up happening is you make that financial commitment and in your mind, the switch finally goes off and you're like, I'm going to do this. And then some shit happens.
Absolutely. So everyone rewind that back 2 minutes, because Brian just dropped some gems. And the thing that I've heard is that people that pay attention.
Yes.
Like when you get free download or you like watch a free YouTube video, yeah, you get a little bit of value. I'm sure you could get a lot of great nuggets. You might learn something, but the perceived value is not as high because you're like, whatever, it's free. They already got hundreds of thousands of YouTuber or, subscribers and views. I'm just another one of those. I'm going to drop a comment, maybe like a like emoji, and I'm out, right? You dip back to your old life, like you said. Yep. But when you freaking pull out your wallet and you pay $3K or $5K to go to this event, that's 3 days, and you're like, man, is this going to be worth it? I've done that before. I'm sure you have as well. Yep. Several times.
Yep.
It starts to change your mind. You said, hey, I'm all in. I'm not 1 foot in, 1 foot out, which is easy to do if you can just watch this YouTube video. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to go do something else for 2 hours, versus committing like, hey, I'm going to go to this in-person workshop for 3 days. I can't really be texting on my phone because someone's going to be asking me questions. I got to be plugged in there, getting the most value. Yeah. That's when things really happen. And really, if you invest in the right program and coach, it's going to pay itself back, 10 times over or more.
100%. 100%.
Awesome, man. Such great gems here. And so how does your business look like these days? I know you said you've got the gym and you do the business coaching. You've got online trainers are your main clients that you focus on.
Yeah.
You've got your goals on your vision board, but like, what does your day-to-day look like right now?
So day to day right now, the business is, I'm super grateful for my business right now. I've got 35 people that are working with PT Domination.
Sweet.
My main job right now is like, I started out obviously as like the one-man show where I'm doing everything. I was doing the content, the lead gen, the calls, all of it. So everything was me. And then as I grew, the business started to scale. I started to hire more team members to, help me out with certain things. So I've got, 10 coaches on my team now. I've got 10 virtual assistants. We've got 5 people that work in operations. So we've got like an entire, organization now.
Yeah.
So my main job is creating content to, serve and give more value to my audience. My main job is also connecting with high-level individuals like yourself and, like networking and getting on other podcasts and podcasting myself so that I can show up and serve and attract more clients. My main job is coaching my clients. And so like, showing up in my community, doing live streams, answering all my questions. So on a day-to-day basis right now, I'll like walk you through like a typical day. Wake up,
let's do it.
3 o'clock in the morning, every
3
single
o'clock
day.
in the morning day.
Every single day, bro.
I think you got Jocko beat.
Yeah, bro. Let's go. 3 o'clock in the morning, every single day. From 3:15 to 3:30, I do fasted cardio and I like write a post on my social media. When I post it on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I do the same thing as you. I'm trying to be everywhere at all times. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. After I'm done the post, I upload to my Instagram stories. I get done. I go stretch and listen to success motivation for 10 minutes. I write in my journal, like gratitude affirmations. So I'm so grateful that XYZ. And then after that, I'll do 10 minutes of silent meditation. I do a 2-hour workout after that, come home. I do meetings from like 7:30 till 11, including my podcast. And then in the afternoon from like 12 till 6, that's where I'll do like business building projects. So sometimes business building projects will be, me doing this interview with you. Sometimes it's, networking with somebody else in my mentorship program. Sometimes it's studying more in the program that I'm currently in. From 12 till 6 is when I'm usually like building my business. And then I'm trying to be done work at 6 and I go to bed at 8. So that's a typical work day. And I pretty much do that every single day, 5 days a week.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's really similar to mine, other than that you start earlier than me. Cause I'm like, man, how do you start your workday at 7 a.m.? It's because you're up at 3 a.m. I usually get up like 6:15. Fiance's got a day job. The alarm goes off. I kind of wake up on her schedule.
Yeah.
And so by the time I'm going to the gym and getting back, it may be like 10 a.m. So I feel like behind the 8 ball, I guess, or behind the curve or whatever the phrase is. And so you're already getting all that stuff done. 6 o'clock, you're done. 8 p.m. you're in bed so you can be up at 3 a.m. for the next day.
Yeah. I have this thing in my head. Have you ever heard of the book, The Slight Edge?
Yeah. I love it.
Super good. Yeah.
That one and then the compound effect are like both kind of similar, right? A little bit every day.
Yeah, super good. So one of the things so when I first started business coaching for online trainers, it was back in 2018. There was like 3 other people in the space that were super high level. And I was just getting started. And my goal when I started was to be the #1 business coach for online trainers, which by the way, me and my business partner, Cole, we now are the #1 business coaches for online trainers, which is super cool.
That's awesome.
So that was my goal when I first started. And there was already people in the space that were dominating the space. So the only way for me to have an advantage is I had to work harder than them. So working harder than them meant that I had to get up earlier. So I'm like, I'm fucking getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It also meant, I had to. I'm like, I also like one of them was podcasting twice a week. So I was like, if he's podcasting twice a week, I'm going to podcast 5 times a week. So I figured out the price of their program. I'm like, mine's going to be cheaper. So I just like did everything that I possibly could to get a slight edge on all of them in every aspect. And it's just been like that for like 2.5 years. And then, like you said, the compound effect, like when you have day after day actions like that, every single day you're doing the same thing over and over again, and they're all successful actions over time, those results will just start to like add up and compound on each other. And I feel like that's what happened. That's how we got to 500Ks. I'm always like looking for that like slight edge, that one thing that's going to get me just a little bit closer to my goals.
Yeah, man. Those little things every single day, it's the little things that matter the most in a way where you may think it doesn't matter, but you waking up at 3 a.m. over the course of a year while someone hits snooze or sleeps till 7 or 8 a.m. on a weekday, right? When they know they should be working or taking that meeting, it's going to compile over time or compound over time. And for anyone listening, it really helps to look at those like amortization tables or whatever. Like if you're actually looking at compounding, I know it's been said to be like the eighth wonder of the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's weird to wrap our heads around it. And we know you got to invest in all this stuff and your money grows like somehow magically over time. But if you really look at those tables and you're like, dang, if you put this much in at 20 years old versus 25 years old and you invested the same amount, it could be so much different just because you started sooner. But I mean, for those listening, you can start right now, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So get started, but understand that those little things you do every day, that's what gets you to that next level.
I love that quote. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I love that quote. That's
because it's so easy to just live in regret and be like, I could have done this 20 years ago. Oh man, I'm too late. There's all these big fitness influencers. Brian, we got Christian Guzman. Like, I'm not even going to start a YouTube channel. Screw it. I'm just going to work in my day job. Right. And now we could just be like, hey, okay, they've got their space. Yeah. Brian, you've already been working hard, waking up at 3 a.m. Someone listening is going to start waking up at 2:30 a.m. I know a guy who does that, but he's like a little older, like 60 something years old. Yeah, so you're the youngest guy I know who wakes up that early, man. So congrats.
Dude, I want this. Like, I want it. Like I want energy. And yeah, I want it. I'll say it on the podcast too. Like, my goal is to be bigger than Gary Vaynerchuk.
Hell yeah.
That's the
his goal is to buy the Jets, right? Like, that's still his goal. And you've got a goal to be bigger than him.
I want to be bigger than Gary Vaynerchuk. And I feel like Gary Vaynerchuk he really started going all in when he was 30. I've followed Gary V's story forever. He started going all in when he was 30 and I'm 29. I actually turned 30 in 9 days.
Sweet. So happy early birthday.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you. So I've been going all in on my podcast for 2 years now. So I feel like I have a head start with him there. Going all in on Instagram for a couple of years, going all in on TikTok now. So now
you're already further than he was at your age.
That's what I'm saying. So now I just started going all in on YouTube. Like, I'm dropping 2 YouTubes a week right now. And so I feel like this times 10 years, like, it's only a matter of time. And Gary V is like, he's older now,
so like he's slowing down a little bit.
There's going to be some space for somebody to move into it. And like, I want to move into that space. Like, I want it.
And what's so powerful about that too, is like, I always find this I guess humbling is not the right word, but like motivating. If you look at Gary's first videos on YouTube, they're not that great. Like, they kind of suck. The quality, obviously, the technology wasn't as good. The content wasn't so great. The delivery, some people are annoyed by his voice or whatever, like how he delivers stuff. He's got like that, I just go to a garage sale. Like, I'm trying to do my Gary Vee impersonation, but it's never been an easier time to grow and scale than right now. Right. And you're already there. You've got that big vision, but it's also important to not compare your like chapter 5 to someone's chapter 20. I was on a Clubhouse call the other day. This one guy's comparing himself. He just started like as a lender, a loan officer in the real estate space. And he's like, man, I want to get like so-and-so. I'm like, dude, she's been doing this for 25 years. You just started last year and you're already having a record year. You can't compare yourself. Like, you're killing it. Yeah. She's killing it way more. She's got that awesome mansion and everything, but she's been doing this for decades. Yeah. And she's old enough to be our mothers. Right. Yeah. So it's hard because we compare ourselves to others like that. And while it's good, we have to remember, like, compare you versus you. Where were you a year or two ago? Like, dude, compared to 23, man, look how far you've come.
Even I think it's I love that point. And I think it's super important to even go like even more micro and say, like, compare yourself now to like 2 months ago. Because like
a lot happens.
So many people are like, they get so caught up. And like, I think it's really important to like watch what other people are doing and get inspired by them. And also, like, for me, it's like, I'm super obsessed with my own growth. And so I want to like know, how did I do? Like, what numbers did my business do last month? And same with my podcast. Like, the way that I've been consistently growing my podcast is I'm like, okay, so what numbers did my podcast do last month? And what do I want to do this month? And then what do I need to do to hit the numbers that I want to hit this month on my podcast? And then I always am like hyper focused on these like little like micro like growth. Yeah. And I see you with 1 million podcast downloads and I'm like, that's super sick. I'm super inspired by that. But I'm not like, oh man, like Chris got 1 million and I don't, right? Like, I'm not like that. I'm like,
you're excited because you're like, sweet, I can tap into him. I can ask him some questions and get there faster.
Yes, exactly.
So many great nuggets, man. Well, I know we're kind of at the end of the half hour. My little timer that I set went off. So were there any last nuggets that you wanted to drop before we let everyone know, where to find you, how to connect with you?
Man, I just truly believe that if you're listening to this right now and you want something in life, like it is 100% within your grasp. And it's a lot closer than you think. I think that a lot of people put like their goals and visions, like almost like way out of reach. And they put themselves like, in a distance to them, because I think it makes it easier for them to accept the reality that they're not there if they keep telling themselves that it's too far away. But like, I'm here to tell you that you could be like 3 feet from gold. Like, you could be like one phone call away from your next $15,000 deal, but you'll never get there if you don't have that like intense desire to succeed. So my invitation for you is to find a way to take one more step forward today, and to use this podcast as the inspiration that you need to like push yourself just a little bit farther. Cause like, guys, I'm 29 years old. I truly don't think there's anything special about me. I talk about this all the time. The only thing that I think that is like, that I do differently is I just like operate at this frequency every single day because I believe in myself and I know it's possible.
Dude, 3 feet from gold. That's it. That's the mic drop moment. I know you can't drop your mic because it's on that fancy, that fancy stand, but so much knowledge there. Just 3 feet from gold. Don't give up, everyone listening. Take action today and make sure to go connect with Brian. Where can our audience go to follow you? I know you're really easy to find if you just Google you, but still, if you want to drop your BMarkFit on Instagram, right?
Yeah. So BMarkFit on Instagram and TikTok. And so Instagram and TikTok, BMarkFit. If you guys want to listen to the podcast, it's the Change Lives, Make Money Online Trainer podcast. And it is a podcast niche specifically for online fitness coaches. But I get a lot of people that listen to the podcast that specifically say like, yo, like you can
apply that to any business.
Yeah, really. You can apply it to anything. They're like, I get so much value to your podcast and I'm not an online coach. So if you guys get value from the podcast or from this podcast, then you would definitely love the Change Lives, Make Money Online Trainer podcast.
Absolutely. And I will say I've listened to a few episodes as well. And I'm like, dude, I could apply this to my real estate business. So cool. Lots of great gems. And thank you once again, Brian. I really enjoyed this conversation. You're a cool dude. Love everything that you've accomplished. Your story is really inspirational and can't wait to continue to follow the journey.
Bro, let's go. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being a listener to the show and for checking out my message. If you've been here for a while, I'm especially grateful for you. But if you're new here, thank you once again for being a listener. Just wanted to let you know, I help people buy, sell, or rent real estate across the nation in the US. I probably could even help you across the world, but it just gets a little more difficult with time zones and setting up times to chat. If you have any questions at all, shoot me a DM on Instagram. My handle is chrisbello_, or you can also go to my website, chrisbello.com/real estate. Again, that is chrisbello.com/real estate. Happy to help any way that I can. And thank you once again for being a listener.